Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and I'll tell you what, it's the start of a new month. Here we are in February. I already have a feeling that 2024 is going to fly by, but so much of what we accomplished this year is all about the environments that we put ourselves in. And today's guest has such an interesting perspective on those environments. He's not just someone that thinks about the environments, he's someone that actively creates environments that are creative, that are inspiring, that get the best out of us. His work really involves the intersection of creativity, of aesthetics, of understanding business and how to get the most out of us. So let me tell you about today's guest. His name is Gueston Smith. He's an innovative architectural designer and the creative force behind Guesscreative and Kubed Living. He's also a graduate of the USC School of Architecture, which, yes, means that he lives in the City of Angels, which is one of my favorite cities in the entire United States, heck, in the entire world. Gueston's journey began with a heartfelt promise to design an accessible home for his younger special needs sister at the age of 12 years old. He made this promise to his mother because she found it extremely difficult to find a home that accommodated the needs of his younger sister. This deeply personal experience has not only shaped his career, but also his approach to design, emphasizing empathy, inclusivity, and human connection. Now, with the multiple ventures that Gueston is involved in, he creates small home spaces, he creates mobile pop-up experiential spaces, retail trailers, mobile kitchens, mobile business trailers, so many different things. He also has his own sneaker line. This guy, I'll tell you what, as someone who has crawled through his Instagram, this is someone who is incredibly creative. I think he's going to give us a lot of food for thought today, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Gueston Smith. All right, Gueston, I am so excited that you're here with us today. Welcome to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you, man. You're so warm and welcoming. I'm excited for this conversation.
Heck yeah, no, likewise. I'll be honest with you. I don't even fully know where we're going to go today because I know that your mind is so creative and you're involved in so many different things that spark your own creative juices that we're all going to be a little bit mind blown here today. So first things first, take us beyond the bio. I tease listeners a little bit about how awesome you are, but how the heck did you start doing all these amazing things that you get into today?
It's all started really in my self journey, just starting to understand myself more and being more interested in figuring out who I am on a deeper level and what I could offer. Originally, I got into design. I come from very creative parents, and I had a special needs sister, as you had mentioned in the bio. I had a special needs sister with cerebral palsy. She couldn't walk or talk growing up, and she was a big part of my life. She was 5 years younger than me, and so I was a big part of my life on taking care of her growing up. And so my mom would look for homes that would accommodate for her special needs. And at the time, she could not find anything that could accommodate like wheelchair access or anything like that. So my mom jokingly said, "You should design a home for your sister one day." And I kind of took that to heart. My mom bought like a home design program for me called Punch Home Pro Platinum or something like that. You could literally draw lines in this program and it would start to show 3D volumes and you'd be able to actually see space created in real time. And it blew my mind as a kid. So I would experiment and design these huge homes that didn't make much sense, but it was something I could really explore. And that has led me down a path of just creating and drawing and sketching and thinking of different iterations of ideas just on so many different levels, and combining my intensity for learning knowledge of self on top of understanding everyone else, just people in general. It's allowed me to start looking at things in a different scope and a different lens to be able to provide cool designs for others that are practical, functional, and can really speak to everyone else, connecting to who they truly are so that they can shine their lights in this world.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah.
I love that overview for so many reasons, Gueston. And I think it really reveals at the root of your story how obviously having that real life need, the practical need of a space for your sister, for example, really means that you think about the spaces so that they serve us as the people who fill those spaces. Talk to us more about that, because a lot of us, myself included, I for sure am not, when it comes to aesthetics, when it comes to the way that I set things up, I don't necessarily consider those things. I am fortunate in that my spaces are functional for me, but I know that your work really brings out higher potentials in us in so many different ways. Talk to us about the things you consider when it comes to even assessing and setting up a space or an environment that helps bring out the best of us.
Yeah, well, first thing what I understand that we all need is a connection back to nature. And a lot of the spaces that we're currently in don't they're not set up for that exposure and that connection back. So things such as plants, natural lighting, indoor, outdoor connection, like large windows and doors, so you can be able to go in and outside, eat outside, or cook inside, those kind of things. That connection to nature is super powerful because, as humans, we've been kind of deprived from that, not only in the shape of the buildings that we have, but also just the individual conditions that we're living in currently. I think of one of the apartments that I used to live in a couple of years ago that was faced towards a wall and had barely any natural lighting into it. And it was just such a depressing space. I would come home during the day sometimes and just want to leave because it was just dark in there. And no matter what I could do, I could never feel that liveliness that you feel just from being out in the sun and enjoying the natural world. And so I look for different ways, not only in bringing elements like that in, but just even in the design language and the shape and the form. I'm starting to get closer into connecting those levels too.
Yeah, I love that, especially since obviously most listeners can't see us right now, but I can see the big greenery that's behind you. And I can imagine how that affects even your mood on a day-to-day basis of being around living plants. You're right, bringing that nature into our spaces. Talk about that, because here on the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast, a lot of people, they are singularly focused. They're thinking, I just want to grow my business this year. That's my goal. Whether they're still a entrepreneur, or whether they already have a business and they want to grow that existing business. Gueston, you work with a lot of real life clients for practical types of solutions. Why is this space so important? What is it about those environments that, whether it's from a business perspective, obviously we could talk about home as well, but what is it about these types of spaces? Is it they bring out our creativity, our productivity? What is it?
Oh, absolutely. In all realms, if you are, a space can be inspiring. A space can be a place that opens your mind. A space can be a place that energizes you. And if for business, for anything, your environment is extremely important. Even growing up, in terms of your nurture, the nurture and the environment that you're exposed to growing up creates different ways that you see the world. And in having that kind of understanding, you can then create spaces that energize you, that make you excited to be there. My room right now is set up in a way that it checks off the boxes of all things that I really need. I have a place where I can work out. I have a boxing bag with weights. I have my desk, which is my core area for handling my business, and I have plants all over, so that it excites me. It feels like it connects me back to nature, and as I see how they respond and react to how the sun comes in. So I can, on a daily basis, those are little things that inspire me just to keep working, because I'm in a space that it inspires me. So little things like that. Your environment is extremely important for any condition, whether that's just home, whether it's your business. It's how you interact. Your environment starts to mold your thoughts and your feelings, and then that affects how you show up to the world.
Yeah, it's true. I really love that perspective. I think it's really deep, and it's profound for all of us to take that to heart, is that we are, in many cases, the products of our environment, whether we're talking figuratively or literally. I also love, for example, seeing here on video, your whiteboard in the background right next to a big plant that you have. That's where your ideas, you're allowing yourself that room to hit the whiteboard. I'm a big whiteboarder myself, so that always sticks out in my eye. Gueston, I feel like This question, though, so many of us, a blank page scares us. A blank page is the hardest. It's always, starting that first paragraph, starting that first essay that we're writing. As someone who wrote a book in 2015, starting was the hardest. Whereas I would imagine for you, a blank page presents opportunities. Somehow you go from nothing to, whether it's creating mobile pop-up retail trailers, for example. I can't even imagine how you go from scratch to envisioning that space. What's your creative process with a blank page in front of you to even start putting pen to paper?
Well, since it's not purely art, everything is a problem that needs to be solved. There's a set of constraints that are presented. So even to get to mobile pop-up trailers, for example, that was my response to COVID. At that time, everything shut down. All the businesses shut down. And I was starting to think, what if space was more flexible? What you had a space that you could take around to different markets, expose your business to different consumers without having to have a space that's fixed, and also having such a large investment on having a space that may not even really be the space that's best for your business. And so it was a response from me to COVID, basically. And so to answer your question about having a blank slate or a blank page, it's really just starting to figure out what the constraints of that page is, and then starting to answer the questions, and figure out the questions that need to be answered, and then starting to answer those, and creatively combining different disciplines together to create a cohesive piece of work that is practical, that is beautiful, and that solves the needs at hand.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting actually hearing your perspective on that, because you use the word constraints, but actually it sounds like constraints give you that freedom to start imagining per the specifications of the resolution, the solution that you're looking for. I think it's so brilliant. And that last point that you made, gosh, I've been so excited to go here with you, which is that multidisciplinary, because a lot of people are going to be here and they're going to think, well, Gueston, you're just more creative than the rest of us are. But obviously I know through looking at your work that you take inspiration from different areas, whether it's, a lot of people may not realize you are a full instructor in, I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, so I'll just say a form of martial arts. Talk to us about how you take inspirations from these other things that you're involved in, and how you use those to manifest or really expand your mind so that it can manifest itself in more creative solutions across all things you do, not just in martial arts, but I'm willing to bet you apply that to business, to design, to so many things.
Well, for me, it's a natural flow of things. As I've started to learn how to, I guess, meditate, listen to myself a little bit more, figure out what I like and what I don't like. There's been innate interest in skills that I've wanted to learn. And so I would go explore those skills, and I would put the time in, I would do the work, I would explore and learn the fundamentals. And then once I learned the fundamentals, I would then start to apply my different thoughts that I had. For example, with martial arts, the martial arts that I practice is Jeet Kune Do, which is Bruce Lee's philosophy. It's the way of the intercepting fist, as having no way as way. And so it's taking that philosophy and applying it to my life. I innately have always felt that way about a lot of different things. Growing up, I would try different exercises as a child, just that something I've never seen. I would just feel it in my body. Like I would see how my muscles would react, and I would then create a workout for myself based on the specific muscle that I had felt in that movement. And so that kind of thinking has been applied to so many different levels of my business, of my ideas, is taking the fundamentals and then combining those fundamentals with other fundamentals that I've learned in the past. For example, I used to play basketball as a kid. So I implement basketball workouts in my martial arts, which builds a different level of explosion. And so that kind of thinking has allowed me to have that same creative process, and creating mobile trailers or designing homes with shipping containers. It's just this cross-disciplinary thinking allows me to connect dots that aren't usually connected. Granted, reading and education does help tremendously. I take that same approach with self-education. I'll read books on design thinking. I'll read books on the fundamentals of design, and I'll read books on spirituality. I'll read books on business. So it's about connecting all these different dots to see where that will lead you based on the information that you've acquired.
Yeah, I love that point that you're illustrating for us here today of connecting those dots. And you had that disclaimer of the dots that most other people wouldn't connect. I've never asked anyone this, Gueston, because I know that this is the way it works in my head. And it sounds like you pull on so many different experiences and interests and hobbies and passions in your own mind. Do you have some sort of mechanisms for connecting those dots and being able to call on those things? For me, for example, I'll give a quick example. Things that I learn on the tennis court, I can't help but after the match be like, okay, what did I learn today? And I create those times and intentions for me to look back on and make sure I extract all the goodness from that experience, all the knowledge that I can. Same thing when I play chess or I read a book about chess, is I think of, okay, what are the lessons that grandmasters have learned? What can I glean from that? And then I always ask myself that question, what does this say about life? What does this say about business? I intentionally look for those. What's that thought process look like in your head from all these different things you're into?
Very, very similar. It's the same. Actually, that's pretty cool. It's just seeing what I learned, apply and learning, figuring out how I can apply that in different ways. So I'll go back and I'll journal. I'll just reflect sometimes and just say, okay. And sometimes it's just, it kind of just feels natural because the way my mind works, it connects things on its own. Like I don't separate things into boxes that much. And so I'll just randomly think of something that I'd done before, and it will then, when I'm thinking of a new problem, like a way that I used it before or a way that I solved a problem before will then come up and say, okay, maybe this could be solved in this way. I'll get to the root of the thing.
Yeah, I really like those insights because I'm sure if someone's listening to this right now, they're probably thinking, well, you guys look to make those connections. And I think that's exactly the point, is you and I you're not doing martial arts just for the sake of martial arts. You're doing it because you know it extrapolates into life. You know it extrapolates into business. We could say the same thing for relationships or literally anything. I think there's so much of this crossover, which leads me to this next question, because when you talk about physical fitness and exercise, for example, we talk about muscles. And I wonder how much, because you are someone who, you've used the word innately. I'm sure that to a degree you are innately creative. How much of this is like a muscle though, where it comes from those reps? It comes from, you've done things like this. You've exercised those creative muscles for years and years. And that's why that muscle is stronger. How much of creativity can we just get through reps and practice and through doing it versus how much of it is just, Gueston, you were born this way and this is what you were made to do?
Well, one thing that kind of bothers me is when people say they're not creative, because creativity in itself is just looking at things in a different way. It doesn't have to be some airy paintbrush sensibility. Creativity is really just thinking of things differently than the way that is, I feel like, established. It's creative thought. And so for me, that creativity has been a muscle, right? With anything I do, you have to do the work. You can't say that you're something and then not do the work and repetition. You have to do the work when you don't want to do the work. And as far as anything, so for creativity, for projects, for creation, for your business, for writing, everything takes practice. Everything takes consistency and persistence. You have to be persistent and disciplined. So that is key. It takes reps. Anything that you want to get good at takes reps.
Yeah, I want to echo that point for listeners because, gosh, I think this is an important point for all of us as entrepreneurs. Gueston, you said that we have to do it when we want to and when we don't want to. Listeners, there are many days where Gueston and I don't want to work on our businesses. We wake up, we're tired, or we just feel burned out. We've gotten rejected. So many different reasons why we may not feel like doing the thing, but you just keep doing the thing. And you'll want to do that thing even more when you learn how to start powering through it. Gueston, I want to ask you this because in my research for today's session, it's a word that popped up so much about your approach. And I think it makes you really unique in your space. And that is the word empathy. Obviously, you have a personal connection to your why, to why you do the work that you do. How does empathy flow into this work? Because especially when we talk, for example, I know you've done logo design for brands and for companies. A lot of people might be like, how's my branding? How's my logo going to be empathetic? How does empathy play into all this?
Empathy is extremely important for the direction I feel that the society should be going. It's just everyone should be a little bit more empathetic and actually take the steps to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and to figure out what their problems are, or what they need to be solved, or just their overall experience. You have to ask questions. You have to try to understand. And for me, empathy is extremely important, especially for design. When I'm designing, for example, for someone's business, their branded environment, I need to know what is the experience that they want their consumers to have. And then we both have to start to ask questions of how will they actually feel based on the experience that you want them to have, so that you can have a cohesive experience where the input matches the output. So yeah, empathy is extremely important, and especially when just talking on day-to-day, making business deals, having business conversations with clients or other businesses, you have to be able to understand where that person is coming from. Who are they? What are their experiences? How are they seeing you? How do you see them? Like, empathy is extremely important. I can't harp on that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I want to switch gears a little bit because now we're talking to Gueston with his creative hat on, but I want to talk to Gueston, the fellow entrepreneur. I always say to our listeners that you are one of us. You're just like the rest of us as an entrepreneur. And for me, what I really respect and admire about the way that you operate is you have your hands in so many different pots. A lot of people, they always say, focus on just one thing, just do that one thing and do it really well. But I'm like you. I have the podcast. I have a portfolio of different companies, some in the sports industry, some in the health and fitness industry, some in the consulting industry, all of these different spaces. And Gueston, my argument is that each of these things makes me better at all of the other things that I do. You're someone who has a clothing line, a shoe brand, you design trailers like we've talked about here today. You have your hands in so many different pots. How do you find yourself managing that day to day as an entrepreneur, as a business owner? What's your way for keeping all of those things on track and moving in the right direction?
Well, each day I have to set a list of things that I prioritize and need to get done for that day. And then I'll have a list for the week that needs to be done for that week. And so I will follow that list. I will sit and every day before we start, or every week before I start my week, I'll create a list of things I know they need to get done. And so that'll be in these different disciplines and these different ventures that I have my hands in. So there'll be certain things I know they need to get done, and there's certain things that I know that aren't as important, but I would still like to have it done. So a checklist is extremely valuable for me. It not only helps me and excites me to cross something off the list, but just having that there to visually remind me that this needs to get done is extremely helpful and valuable for me. That's my approach, and that's my process.
Yeah, listeners, it's not just about having that list, it's about having the discipline to stick to the list. So we always say success leaves clues. You're hearing from Gueston how he manages it. He doesn't just make the list, he sticks to the list. So it's an important takeaway for all of us. Gueston, there's so much that I want to talk to you about today. And one of those, I'm really excited that you are a big believer in affirmations. I personally, for me, it's that Aloe Black song, I'm the Man. If I need to pick me up on a daily basis, I just turn that song on. It gets me going. And also for me personally, a message that I heard from my mom, she's from Albania. She immigrated to the US. One thing she always told me since childhood is anything is possible. It's something that repeats to me so much whenever I need it. And it also, when the Celtics won the NBA championship in 2008, it's the 3 words that Kevin Garnett said, which is anything is possible. It's 3 words that stick with me. Gueston, I'm curious to hear your perspectives on affirmations, and what are some, if you're willing to share it with our listeners, what are some of those words that get you all excited when you need it in those moments, whether they're good moments or not so great moments?
Before we get to that, could I ask you a question?
Yeah, please do. Lay it on me.
I would like to know how you approach the multidisciplinary thing on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly basis. How do you handle that?
So I love that question. I'm a big fan of batching. So for me, batching is incredibly important. So for example, you and I, listeners, Gueston are recording this months before you all hear it hitting the airwaves. But for me, we have 5 episodes a week. For me, Tuesdays are podcast days. So on Tuesdays, all I'm doing is podcasts, which you talk about constraints actually, Gueston. This is a nice full circle part of the conversation. For me, by knowing that Tuesdays are podcast days, on Monday, I don't think about the podcast. On Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, I don't even think about the podcast. It takes no mental space in my mind. So I am such a stickler for batching. And a lot of people will allow themselves, speaking of discipline, like how disciplined you are with your list, for me, it's that mental discipline of not allowing myself to think about, to worry about, to even do any of these things. If an email comes up and it's podcast related, I'll take care of it on Tuesday. And I trust myself in knowing that that's how I'll handle it. So yeah, batching is like the key to so much of what I do.
I love that. I think I want to integrate that into my process too. That's really good. Okay. Batching, so like a day by day thing. That's brilliant. Interesting. Okay. So about affirmations. Affirmations, how you speak to yourself is extremely important, especially as an entrepreneur, because, entrepreneurship is not just business. You have to be able to talk to yourself in an encouraging and inspiring way, because otherwise the work doesn't get done. You're in charge of what happens, as opposed to if you just have a 9-to-5 job. No one's telling you to do the thing. You have to do the thing. And so affirmations for me is extremely important. And to the degree that I've even implemented that into one of my clothing collections. It's called the I Am collection, actually, because I am is 2 of the most powerful words in our language. It's whatever you put after that. That's what you're going to do, and especially if you do the action behind it. So, for example, I am healthy is something that I say every day, every week. I never really get sick, and that's really helpful for me, because I also, in the affirmation, me saying the affirmation, I'm doing the work of eating healthy, working out, and taking in those little things that will not hinder me if I didn't do them. If I didn't eat well, if I didn't take care of my health, that's going to hurt my business, because I have to be available to do the work. And so affirmations such as I am healthy, I'm strong, I'm empathetic, I'm loving, I value my relationships, my lady, my family. Those things I have to tell myself. I tell myself daily, because it reminds me of who I want to show up in this world as. And like I said, I am, and it's more of a personal thing for you as the listener to figure out who you want to be, and then do the work to become that.
Yes, very powerful, Gueston. I knew you'd take us there, and I was hoping that you would here on the air, because when I was reading about your clothing collection, it's wording that I saw right there. I am are 2 of the most powerful words in our language, and absolutely true to that. And they're also flexible enough for us in any moment to choose. You talk about health. It's something, coming back to the podcast and how I'm batching, that's the one thing every week. I'm like, I need to be healthy on Tuesdays because I have so many interviews. I am healthy. Repeating those. It's always, I love that quote. Quotes are big to me. I love that quote of, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. We get to set those intentions. So really powerful insights there. Gueston, I could talk to you for days. I'm excited for next time I'm back in Los Angeles to get a chance to get coffee in real life. But first things first, there's two questions that I want to squeeze in. The first of which is I'd love to just open the floor for you to, actually I'll save that one for the last one because then I want you to drop links on us. So I guess we'll go to your best takeaway for listeners. We talked about so many things, and I know that this episode is going to get them inspired to have that discipline, to create those spaces, both literally in their physical spaces, but also mentally in their minds. The cross-discipline, the multidisciplinary connecting of the dots that we talked about. So much good stuff, all in less than half an hour here today, Gueston. What's the one takeaway you want listeners to have from here? What's that one action or that thing you want them to think about and incorporate into their lives and businesses?
I would want you guys to stay curious, never stop learning. No matter what your craft is, your industry is, be the best that you could be in your industry. Stay curious, put in the work, put in the reps, and keep showing up for yourself. Speak to yourself with love, with empathy, with grace, and with patience. But don't quit. Keep going. Just keep going.
Whoa, Gueston, I got chills as you said that advice, because I think right there, we don't say it often enough in society, especially not in business, but really just in life of treat yourself, talk to yourself with kindness, with love. It's funny how we talk to others more politely and with more love and warmth than we talk to ourselves. So I think it's such an important message here, which makes me so excited for my final question, which is obviously, I want to give you the stage, share with listeners a little bit more about all the different things that you do and drop those links on us, because I know that I'm curious to dive more into, especially your clothing collection. I am. That is the best named collection that I've ever heard of. So tell listeners all the great things you're up to and drop those links on us.
Okay. Well, if you want to learn more about Guesscreative, you can visit Guesscreative.com. That's like guess, I guess what, Guess, creative.com. You'll find blogs that I write about self-development. I write about learning. I write about some of the processes of how some of these projects get done as far as shipping container homes, as far as the mobile business trailers. If you want to learn more about that, if you're curious on learning more about creating a mobile business experience, you're more than welcome to go on my website. Also, I have a clothing collection and a shoe line if you're interested in having some very cool designs created by an architecturally minded designer. This new tracksuit that is a prototype. It's from Côte d'Ivoire. The fabric is from Côte d'Ivoire, Africa. So I have like very cool patterns and things like that as well. I also have electric ATVs. You know, I'm very into innovative, forward thinking. Found a fabricator that's able to make these that are very fun and fast. I have 3 at home in Texas. Me and my family ride them around. They're so quiet and they can even do wheelies, so that's really cool. And as far as shipping container homes, if you're interested in getting a shipping container home or learning more about that, you can visit kubedliving.com with a K. It's a great company. We talk individually with our clients based on their needs and their property. If you have a property, we'll teach you all about that. Just have a good conversation with you on the process. There's so much for you to explore. If you're interested in martial arts, you can visit my Instagram, Jaguar JKD. It's like Jaguar with a Y, Jaguar JKD. And you'll see some of the cool punching bag sequences that I have, and you'll be able to learn a little bit on how to throw a punch, how to throw a kick efficiently, effectively, simply, and most directly. So, yeah, it's a lot to explore, but have fun.
Heck yeah. Well, I know our listeners well, and I know that they're going to be super keen to dive into all those different links, no matter what it is that appeals to you. Listeners, if you want to see the way that a multi-passionate entrepreneur has these multidisciplinary avenues of not only growing businesses and helping people and making an impact in the world, but also how he puts his stuff out there. I think more of us need to put our things into the world. Then scroll down wherever it is that you're tuning in, and you'll find all those links that Gueston just dropped on us. So don't be shy. And for those of you who can't see on video, he's not kidding. The jacket that he's wearing with the Cote d'Ivoire inspired patterns, incredibly cool. It's just one example of all the creative things that he's up to. So scroll down, check out those links. Otherwise, Gueston, on behalf of myself and all the listeners around the world, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of this with us here today.
It's a pleasure, Brian. Thank you for having me.